the first pages I started drawing of the Lucent happened in 2015. And I'd never drawn a comic before. I like what you said. I looked at the comics that I liked. And I thought, I'll do something a bit similar to that. How do they draw this? All right, I'll kind of try and replicate that. That was my process. And when a time came, eventually, okay, I want to put this out as a crowdfund, put it all together, and then it was really successful. And now there's expectations. Now there's people who are like, they're putting the pressure on you. It's like, this better be bloody good. I'm putting a good amount of money into this. And now the anxiety starts, and you're like, oh, what if it's not as good as what I think it is, or this and that. And then on top of that, I also had that thing that you had where I'm like, the old art isn't as good as the new art. I mean, I can't just go back and continuously redraw stuff.
Right.
Luckily, I met Joe, and Joe said, do you have an editor? And I don't know about you, but my feeling was, editor, but it's already done. What can you do? How will you work on this? Because I don't want to have to redraw it. I don't want, because I was thinking he's going to come and say, well, this whole third of the book, you have to change all that.
Yeah.
And redraw. And that was terrifying for me.
That's understandable. I'm same situation, because Flying Fortress was done. It had been done for
exactly
2 or 3 years at that point. So it's like, I guess you can make sure that the grammar is good, but he did way more than that too. I mean, it was.
Well, that's what we're going to get into.
Yeah.
Because that's what I said. So Joe said, well, I edited Flying Fortress. I've got experience in all this, and this is what I want to do. And so Joe just kind of sat me down and said, an editor in indie comics is not what we think of when we hear comic book editor, like, those crazy people out calling everyone rude words on Twitter,
not
and
C's.
Exactly, not C's, and just basically playing a fool and not actually doing any good work, and letting rubbish get through. Whereas in independent comics, an editor is more like a contractor that you hire, so you're the boss still, but they're there to make sure whatever you're making is the best it's going to be. And I don't know if you've noticed this out there, Eric, but I see like a lot of these people making indie books out here crowdfunding. A lot of them seem kind of reticent to hire an editor.
They do,
because and I wonder if it's because they feel like, well, someone's going to be coming in and messing with my vision. Do you think it's that reason?
I think so, because I brought an editor on for Battle Brick Road to just make sure that our scripts were, I won't even say that Zeb's scripts were good. I thought they were great. And I thought, well, let's just get an editor and just kind of get an outside opinion on it, make sure things are good.
Mm-hmm.
But I was hesitant to even do it, because I was like, well, is Zeb going to think I'm, stepping on his toes, thinking, that I didn't think the story was good enough, so we've got an editor here to fix it. That wasn't the case. And the editor that we're using with Battle Brick Road, Brendan Crowther, who's worked with Vaughn on Monster and and a bunch of stuff he's doing, and he's worked with Clint in the past, did exactly the opposite of what I was worried that Zeb would think he was going to do. And it was very much like what you said and what Joe does. It is, this is your story. Here are some suggestions. Like in chapter 2, he's like, well, these two characters aren't really all that fleshed out yet. But we know that they will be. So that's one of those things. It's like, we got it covered. There was a section in chapter 2 that is, for lack of a better term, a little slow. And we figured out a way to cut it down so that it was faster paced and give a little bit more screen time for Scarecrow in the end. So, yeah, I mean, it's very much and again, I haven't worked with a professional, well, you know what I mean, a corporate editor, story editor like at Marvel or DC. So my only experience is with Joe and with Brandon. So they're very similar in that sense.
Snuggy asks, curious about being in it. How much experience does one need? I don't know if I can answer that, but like, I think having anyone with any sort of basic, you know, understanding of language and storytelling would be better than nothing, even if they had no experience in editing, just because the issue that any creator has when you're working on a story, especially if you're the artist as well, like Eric is, you get so close to these things that you see things that it's you see them because they're in your brain, but they're not necessarily appearing on the screen to as someone who's just coming in fresh to the story. And the editor can see those things, and it's not because they're smarter than you, or they have some special experience or insight. It's just the fact that it's another set of eyes. So at the very least, that will improve the book if you get an objective person who will tell you straight. It's kind of so you can see the forest for the trees, essentially.
And it's good to give it to an editor and not just your friend, because they'll be more honest with you.
So should the editor hire take it in steps? For example, after the script, then again after layouts, how in the loop should the editor be? Well, both of us have brought the editor on kind of way late into the project. I would assume that that the earlier you could bring someone on, probably the better, because a lot of this stuff is fixing stuff that probably could have been fixed at that initial plotting stage. So for instance, on one of the pages that Joe and I worked on, Joe just kind of like did one of these, and I was like, oh, this is going to be an interesting page discussion. And he said, now, what's going on here? I was like, okay. So I described to him what I was thinking, and he was like, yeah, that does not come across at all. So what we ended up doing is we just got rid of 2 panels, just chucked them out. And it takes time. It takes time to draw them and color them. So that's time that could have been just, he said, you don't even need that. If you just did this, this, and that, you get the same, story element, whatever's necessary to the story. You show off whatever was necessary for that character in fewer panels. It looks cleaner. You lose these weird panels that no one could understand anyway, rather than having to redraw them. So I think, probably the earlier on the better, but it's not like it's a disaster if you're really late in the game. And that's where I was like, oh, do I really want to do this? But Joe assured me, like he just said, I'll come in. And what happened was with Joe is Joe and I spent, God, it would have been 4 or 5 weeks.
It was over 25 hours of conversation.
And my kids were like banging, like, Joe, all you do is talk to Joe. But we were going through the story just so that he understood the story, as I understood it, not as it is shown in the book. So like he's getting my perspective on what it is. So then now he went to the pages and he's kind of like trying to marry what I told him with what he sees on the pages. And that's where he could flag any potential problems. And that this is sort of story editing stuff, and you can do this at any stage. Some things are a lot easier to tweak than you imagine, even when you've got finished art. And then so that's the story editing side of things. Now, not every editor is going to be doing that. Some editors are just there to do copy editing, and as well art edits. Art edits. Should we get into it? I mean, I've delayed this long enough.
I think the people have earned it. Yeah,
they have, haven't they? They have. Why is it important to do art edits? Especially if it's your first book. I know for me, I thought a lot of this stuff was good enough, and only until Joe pointed out and said, like, gave me that, like, he draws a circle around and goes, what the hell is going on here? And then I would redraw it and go, oh my God. And this is the thing. I'm like, I cannot believe I was going to print this sort of level, you know? And that's why I just think everyone should get an editor, because this stuff hasn't taken a huge amount of time to change. You know, a panel can take anywhere, depending on the art, it could take 20, 30 minutes to do the art fix. But once, if you put it out there without anyone else looking at it, especially if you're not like a pro artist, you know, that's out there forever for everyone to look at. Rob's yelling at me. All right. You guys want to see my embarrassing art problems? I get it.
I think that's the only reason they turned up.
Yeah. You know, in 10 years, you could just keep the bad art now, the bad panels, and in 10 years, you can do a remaster.
There you go.
I am going to be putting out a PDF of the original comic as it was before Joe touched it. Actually, before even I touched it with the colors. So this is just a selection of ones that I thought were kind of funny. So here we go. All right, these are fixes first, by the way. Don't everyone like saying, "Oh, this is shit." I mean, you can say that if you want, but these are the fixes, all right? And keep in mind that I'm trying to fix them in the style that I was drawing at the time. Okay, so it's not necessarily reflective of my current talent.
That is a very
if you want to use that word. If you want to use that word,
no.
Okay, so this is the original. This is the new, and I can't believe I'm doing this. Why did I say I would do this?
Just do it, man.
This is the original here. So as you can see, there's things. Oh my god! Look at his hand.
What is
Look
going
at his
on?
head.
The worst drawing.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. So there's the fix, and this took I don't know. Wait, how long does it take to draw a guy? I mean, it's not that long. Oh. It depends who you are. It didn't take me 3 or 4 days. But like, I was going to print that and think, oh yeah, that'll be fine. And I'm glad I didn't. Oh, this is for Mo. This is for Mo Biggs. So this is a guy who's been kind of hit. He's slid along the floor. He's splurting up blood. And Mo always laughed at the fact that he had he'd been hit so hard that his arms had extended.
Oh man! See,
have you ever been hit that hard that you grow a foot of arm?
These are great edits. They really are. And I remember Joe had given me a lot of suggestions too, and most of them I was like, nah, because I don't know how much of a pain in the ass I was about it, but you know, he would write out these, well, maybe you should do this or that. And again, it was that whole part of like, I don't want to change too much, because if I go down that rabbit hole, I'm never coming out of it again. But
you weren't a pain. It was a question of whenever you get two different people who've never worked together, and especially if they have different styles of storytelling, even though they have the same objectives, if they have different styles of how they get there, then you gotta nice one, D-Wag. There's a learning curve where the two collaborators have to kind of learn how to work together smoothly. And Eric and I had that, Mike and I had that. I'm working on a secret project where the project owner, we went through the same sort of thing. But no, I mean, it took me a little while to kind of get a feel, Eric, for what you considered an art correction versus what I considered it for that specific project.
Right. That's true. I remember that now that you say it, because there was some back and forth a little bit on some things. And I think I pushed back on most of them. Just because it was, you want to see that art progression.
Right.
And I didn't want to make that a thing where, all of a sudden, wow, you know, issue 3, page 4 looks really good compared to the rest of the book. So
what's on 5 and 6, or on 2 and 5. Right. Yeah, I had that same thing as well. So, you know, like I could just have redrawn this whole dude in 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or whatever it would have taken, completely better than this. But if I did that, it wouldn't look like it was sitting on the page where everything else was sort of the same caliber. So I just fixed the arms and a bit of the coloring and stuff like that. I actually haven't pushed back on Joe much at all. But
you should.
Well, I mean, maybe a little thing. So I'm like, yeah, come on, Joe. I mean, I get it. That hand is busted, but it's this big on the page. But anyway,
and that's where I think, Mike, to one of your original questions of what's the difference between a freelance editor in indie comics and a corporate, staff editor at the big two or one of the larger of the so-called indie corporate comic publishers. One of the major differences, I'm a freelancer, so I come in as a contract, employee, so to speak. And for Flying Fortress, Eric's the boss. I make suggestions, but he's the one who decides what goes or what stays. With the Lucent, I'm the employee and Mike's the boss. I make suggestions. He decides what goes, what stays. Whereas in corporate comics, it's the editor who's the boss and they determine what goes or what stays.
Yeah. Yeah. But okay, let's move on. What have we got next? All right, this guy, and this isn't exactly necessarily how I want to have it because this is kind of I'm refiguring this. But anyway, the point is, this is what it used to be, and this is where you're familiar with this one, aren't you, Joe?
Oh yeah.
Oh God, do I have to show this one?
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Wow.
It's Silly Putty Man.
There was a point in my art where I drew this character, this figure like this, and thought, that's good enough. Next panel. Yeah,
at that point in
bank.
At that point in your development as an artist, that looked acceptable.
People are having fun in the comments, which, it was inevitable. Is this extra chromosome? Oh man, it's pretty funny. It's pretty funny. But at the same time, excellent straight line in the background. Yeah, good straight line. You're right. Yeah. Yeah, I haven't had to redraw any of the backgrounds. The backgrounds are fine. It's the figures. Some of them are pretty shocking. That was the most shocking of all the figures, and I just find it funny that I drew that and thought, yeah, that's cool, that's good, and I would, without an editor, I would have printed this.
Well, and as an editor, and having gone through the remastering process with Eric first, and we did 209 story pages, and then another, I don't know, like 17 back matter or something like that. So having gone through that remastering process, I looked at this and I thought, oh wow, this is awful. But how much of this is he really going to redraw? And at first, I honestly, Mike, I tried just circling one or two things. I was like, I can't. I erased those. I just circled the whole guy. I'm like, this is a problem. You decide how much of this you want to fix.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's a couple of guys where you've just done the whole thing, and it's some when they're like this, that's actually better. I mean, trying to rescue this bit by bit, like hand or fix that would have taken a lot longer than just redrawing the whole thing. All right, I do have one more to show. Well, actually, I will finish off with the classic, but so that's the protagonist Ella in some sort of like pre-jump pose, but I originally had her drawn like this, and this is who I call crackhead Ella, or maybe meth addict Ella.
Bogan Ella.
And I remember looking at that thinking I can remember doing that and thinking that would, like, I quite liked that at the time. Like, I was happy with that. Not like the other one. I probably wasn't happy with the other one. I probably wasn't happy with this, but I thought it's the best I can do. It's going to be printed small. It's not a big deal. But this panel here wasn't it's not a small panel, and I was happy with that.
What's the change? Can I see it again? Oh yeah.
Well, and most importantly, she actually looks like the character.
Yeah.
So this one here doesn't even look like her. Like, it's not like this is how she's drawn in other panels. This is just a complete one-off. I draw like this on this panel for some reason.
Yeah. You guys were talking about really is consistency. That's what it comes down to, is trying to make the characters look consistent no matter what pose they're in, no matter what situation they're in. And that's one of the things that an editor should always be doing, is trying to ensure that there's consistency throughout the book. Now, with Flying Fortress, one of the things that I think gave a lot to the project was that in the original version, because it was made by guys who were trying to figure out how to make comics as opposed to established comic pros. When I first read Flying Fortress, that's in its original form, all the characters more or less sounded the same. And I knew from how the book was written that they were supposed to be, individuals from different areas and da-da-da-da-da. So one of the things I said to Eric, I said, well, one of the easiest ways that we can improve this right off the bat is just to give each of these characters a unique voice that would match their personality and where they're from and how they grew up and where they're at in life right now in the story we see them in. And he didn't have to redraw anything for that. So that's one of the things, Mike, that we're kind of headed towards the tail end of art fixes on the Lucent.
Yeah.
And when we get into dialogue, that's one of the things that I'll be making sure that when we're going through, we're checking for consistency of not only that, Ella sounds like Ella all the way through the book, but that every other character sounds like their distinct personality all the way through the book.
Yep. Yeah. Look, it's just, I mean, I hope my sacrifice tonight has been illustrative. Like, I've put myself out there to show people that, even if you're a much better artist than me, there's still things that you might not see. Like, there's things where I'll like draw something that I think is foreshortened, but in reality, it just looks like the person has a tiny leg or something like that. And it'll take Joe pointing that out to me to say, this, like, I get what you're trying to draw here, but it's not working. And then like a light bulb, I'll see what he's seeing. And I go, oh my God. Yeah. He looks like, like a guy with a short leg.
And to be fair to these guys, for everyone in the chat, it's my opinion that every creator ideally should have an editor. So for my own project, I'm the creator, I'm the writer, I'm the publisher. I have an editor lined up to edit me. Because when you're the creator, you're just too close to it. And like Mike was saying, you see what's on the page, but you're also holding at least half of the information still in your head. Yeah. And so when you're looking at the page, you're not looking at it objectively. It's impossible to.
Chris says this has done wonders for my confidence. Yeah, and here's the thing. I drew another book after this book that I've, so I improved since then. And then even since on that book, I've improved since then. These new art fixes, I can remember laboring over some of these faces when I originally drew them. And then Joe's just like, well, fix that. And then I just go in and fix it just like that. And I'm like, why is it easy now? Well, it's, because you've got, it's 5 years in advance, and hopefully that continues on into the future. So, like, again, I hope that everyone takes my example as a warning, get an editor. And it's not like the editor's gonna make your art look like Ethan Van Sciver's. That's not the goal. The goal is to just make sure that there's nothing in there that is really gonna stop ruin the reading experience, because they'll settle in. The reader will settle into the quality of art in the book as long as it's kind of consistent. And you know, you don't have to be the best artist in the world, but if there's something in there that's really eye-poppingly fantastic, like pretty much 90% of my hands were in that book, then yeah, it's probably a good idea to do a little fix up on them.
Thank you very much.
Donkey Madness asks, what if the last page is significantly better than the first page, but the improvement is gradual in between? I think that's a pretty accurate description of the Lucent, actually.
I would say so.
If that's a worry, let me put this out there. If that's a worry for you as an artist, for anybody, draw your pages out of order.
Yeah, I've heard people even say draw them backwards. I don't know why that would fix it, but you know, maybe just like stagger it or something. It's not a concern for me. I think it's quite gradual in the Lucent. But you know, if you were to look, it would be noticeable. And I think it's kind of a part of comics. You know, even the very greatest artists improve from book to book, and you know, probably even inside some books, especially if they're quite long.
You know, you draw them out of order, and you don't see the obvious progression of not so good to better, but you do see it kind of helps your book look a little bit more good overall, I think, in a strange way.
All right, guys, we have gone 20 minutes over, and it was, you know, mostly my fault. I just delayed and delayed until I couldn't delay anymore. But now it's all out there. It's on the internet, and I feel lighter. I feel better. And that's only the icing. That's only the tip of the iceberg. When I release that original, you're all going to have a lot of fun with that, hopefully. So, yeah. Hire an editor. You know, yes, some of them do charge page rates, and that's fine, but they could vary wildly. Like if it's just a copy editor, I don't know, it could be $10.
It could be very, very affordable. I was telling someone in chat, you could be surprised at how inexpensively you can get a copy editor who will fix your spelling, or they'll at least, you're hiring them to look out for and hopefully fix your spelling, your punctuation, your grammar. And that alone will, in the perception of your readers, it will elevate the quality of your script.
Totally. So thank you guys for coming on. Thank you to the chat, sexiest chat in CG. You guys rock each and every day. You were harsh tonight, but fair, I felt. You know,
very moist too.
Hi guys, The Lucent Waking Dream is my 60-page graphic novel. It's available now in demand on Indiegogo. Every backer not only gets the main book, they also receive a 10-page preview of the second book in the series, Painted Death, plus 2 full-color prints. You can also find me on Twitter @TheLucentComic. Why not come hang out with us?